I'm Samantha Mitchell, 32 years old, and last Friday was supposed to be the pinnacle of my career at Reynolds Enterprises. Instead, it became the day my sister Heather deliberately poured scalding coffee down my silk blouse during my presentation. As tears welled in my eyes and laughter rippled through the conference room, the last person I expected to witness my humiliation stepped through the door, my husband Marcus. What happened next changed everything. Before I share how my own sister humiliated me in front of the entire marketing department, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like and subscribe button because this story about family betrayal and sweet justice is one you won't want to miss. To understand the coffee incident, you need to know about Heather and me. We grew up in a sprawling colonial house in Greenwich, Connecticut, where appearances mattered more than feelings. Our father Richard spent most of his time growing his investment firm, while our mother Elizabeth devoted herself to charity committees and tennis clubs. Neither had much time for parenting, but they always made time for Heather's drama. From the beginning, there was a stark difference between us. Despite being only 2 years younger, Heather always competed for attention. I was the responsible one with straight A's and practical plans. Heather was the social butterfly who charmed adults and collected friends like trading cards. Where I worked for achievements, Heather expected them. "Sam's so serious," my mother would say with a sigh, as if my ambition was a character flaw. Meanwhile, Heather's manipulative tendencies were dismissed as knowing how to work a room. The first time I truly understood what Heather was capable of happened during our high school talent show. I'd spent months practicing a piano piece, pouring my heart into Debussy's Clair de Lune. The night before the performance, Heather spilled nail polish remover on my sheet music. When I confronted her, she cried crocodile tears, claiming it was an accident. My parents sided with her, as usual. "Sam, don't be so hard on your sister. She feels terrible," my father said. I stayed up all night rewriting the notes from memory. During my performance the next day, I made several mistakes. The audience applauded politely, but I was devastated. An hour later, Heather performed a dance routine to thunderous applause, winning first place. As she accepted her trophy, she caught my eye and smirked. Then came my college graduation from Cornell, with a degree in fashion marketing. My parents promised to take me to dinner afterward. I waited outside the restaurant for 40 minutes before calling home. My mother answered, surprised. "Oh, Samantha. Heather got accepted to that summer program in Paris. We're celebrating at Bella Vita instead. Didn't she tell you? Join us if you'd like." Heather had known about the program for weeks, but chose to announce it on my graduation day. By the time I arrived at the restaurant, my graduation wasn't even mentioned. The conversation revolved entirely around Heather's opportunity. These weren't isolated incidents. They formed a pattern throughout our lives. Heather would undermine me, play innocent, and our parents would enable her behavior. Eventually, I developed a survival mechanism: forgiveness without forgetting. I'd accept her apologies while keeping my expectations low. It wasn't healthy, but it was easier than confrontation. After college, I distanced myself from family drama by focusing on my career. I moved to New York while Heather bounced between Europe and Los Angeles, pursuing modeling with moderate success. Our interactions became limited to holidays and occasional family events, where we maintained a veneer of sisterly affection. My parents continued their pattern of favoritism. When Heather needed money for an apartment in Milan, they wrote a check without question. When I asked for a loan to take a specialized course in digital marketing, my father lectured me about financial responsibility. "You chose a practical career, Samantha. You should be able to manage your finances better," he said, ignoring that my salary as a marketing assistant barely covered New York rent. I stopped asking for help. Every achievement in my life came through my own efforts, while Heather floated through on charm and family support. Over time, I built a wall between my professional life and my family. My colleagues knew nothing about my sister or our complicated relationship. I preferred it that way. Looking back, I should have recognized that keeping these worlds separate was unsustainable. The moment Heather applied for a position at Reynolds Enterprises, I should have objected more strongly. But years of conditioning had taught me to accommodate her whims while hoping for the best. It was a pattern I couldn't seem to break, even when every instinct warned me of impending disaster. After graduation, my career began modestly at Threadline, a boutique design firm in Manhattan's Garment District. My tiny desk was wedged between fabric samples and outdated catalogs, but I was determined to prove myself. I stayed late drafting market analyses, volunteered for the projects no one wanted, and absorbed everything I could about the industry. Within 18 months, my dedication caught the attention of Elaine Forrester, the creative director. She assigned me to assist with their biggest client, giving me my first taste of real responsibility. When that campaign exceeded expectations, doors began to open. I advanced from marketing assistant to junior strategist, then to brand coordinator. By 28, I was headhunted by Reynolds Enterprises, a major player in fashion retail. They offered me a senior position with a salary that finally reflected my worth. The corner office with Manhattan views felt like validation for years of thankless work. "You earned this, Sam," I told my reflection the morning of my first day, trying to silence the nagging voice that sounded suspiciously like my mother. "Lucky break, don't you think?" It wasn't luck. It was years of 80-hour weeks and sacrificed weekends. It was learning Adobe software at midnight after 14-hour workdays. It was pushing forward when colleagues with family connections advanced faster. 3 months into my new role, I attended the Textile Innovation Conference in Chicago. After a long day of panels and networking, I retreated to the hotel bar for a quiet drink and review of my notes. That's when Marcus Reed sat down beside me. "Mind if I join you?" "Every other seat is taken," he said, gesturing to the crowded bar. Marcus wasn't what you'd expect from a billionaire. No flashy watch or designer suit calling for attention. Just a tall, broad-shouldered man in a simple blue button-down with intelligent eyes and an easy smile. I assumed he was another marketing director or perhaps a supplier. "I couldn't focus after your question about sustainable supply chains," he said, ordering sparkling water. "You challenged assumptions everyone else takes for granted." We talked for hours about industry trends, ethical manufacturing, and digital marketing strategies. Not once did he mention his company or position. When I spoke about my ideas for connecting sustainability with luxury branding, he listened intently, asking thoughtful questions without interrupting. "Most people in fashion treat sustainability as a marketing gimmick," I explained. "I believe it should be fundamental to business operations." "I couldn't agree more," he nodded. "Companies need to embrace these values authentically or consumers will see through it." By evening's end, we exchanged numbers. Marcus asked if he could take me to dinner the following night. I hesitated, citing professional boundaries at conferences. He respected my caution, but persuaded me with a compromise. "How about breakfast instead?" 7 a.m. in the hotel restaurant. Completely professional, I promise. Breakfast turned into lunch the next day, which evolved into dinner when we both returned to New York. Our connection deepened with each meeting. Marcus valued my opinions and encouraged my ambitions in ways no one else ever had. 3 months later, when he finally revealed he was CEO of Reed Global Holdings, which had recently acquired Reynolds Enterprises, I nearly choked on my risotto. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, feeling slightly betrayed. His answer was simple: because for the first time in years, someone was getting to know me, not my net worth. I understood immediately. Like me, Marcus had grown tired of people valuing him for what he represented rather than who he was. Our relationship progressed naturally from there, built on genuine connection rather than status or advantage. When he proposed 6 months later, we agreed to maintain boundaries between our personal and professional lives. I would continue at Reynolds Enterprises based on my own merit, with no special treatment. Most of my colleagues remained unaware of our relationship, which was exactly how I wanted it. Our wedding was intimate, just 30 guests at Marcus's lake house in the Adirondacks. Heather served as my maid of honor, though she complained about the lack of celebrity guests or press coverage. My parents seemed more impressed by Marcus's wealth than our happiness, asking awkward questions about his assets during the rehearsal dinner. "You've done well for yourself, Samantha," my father said, as if I'd selected Marcus from a catalog of eligible billionaires rather than fallen in love with a kind, brilliant man who happened to be successful. After the wedding, I maintained my maiden name professionally and continued climbing the corporate ladder on my own terms. Marcus respected my independence, never interfering with my department or projects. We were partners at home, but maintained separate professional identities at work. For 2 years, this arrangement functioned perfectly. Then Heather re-entered my professional life, and the delicate balance I'd created began to crumble. At Reynolds Enterprises, I'd carved out a respected position in the fashion marketing division. My campaigns consistently outperformed projections, and I'd assembled a solid team that executed my vision efficiently. My closest allies were Rachel Taylor, our digital content manager, and Diana Morgan, our senior graphic designer. We formed a tight trio, supporting each other through brutal deadlines and office politics. Our department head, Patricia Reynolds, presented a constant challenge. Despite her last name, she had no relation to the company founders, a fact that seemed to fuel her insecurity. Patricia was 50 with a sharp bob and sharper tongue, the type who took credit for successes and distributed blame for failures. She played favorites, rewarded loyalty over competence, and viewed innovation as personal criticism. "We've always done it this way," was her frequent refrain whenever I proposed fresh approaches. Despite this obstacle, I maintained a professional relationship with Patricia while quietly implementing changes that modernized our marketing strategy. My campaigns spoke for themselves, forcing her to acknowledge my contributions even as she found subtle ways to undermine my authority. Then came the email that changed everything. "Sam, do you have a minute?" Rachel poked her head into my office one Tuesday morning. "There's a new applicant for the junior marketing position. Patricia wants your input, since you'll be working closely with them." She handed me the resume, and my stomach dropped. There at the top, Heather Wilson. I hadn't seen Heather in months. Her modeling career had stalled, and according to our mother, she was exploring new opportunities. Apparently, those opportunities now included invading the career I'd built. When I called her that evening, her explanation seemed reasonable on the surface. "I've always admired your work, Sam," she said, voice syrupy with manufactured sincerity. "I want to learn from the best, and that's you. Plus, wouldn't it be fun to work together? Like when we were kids." We were never like that as kids, but before I could object, she played her trump card. "Mom and Dad think it's a wonderful idea. They're so excited about us reconnecting." The implied threat was clear. If I refused to help, I'd face weeks of passive-aggressive comments from our parents about how I wasn't supporting my sister. After years of conditioning, I capitulated, agreeing to put in a good word while setting clear boundaries. "This isn't a favor, Heather. If you get this position, I expect professionalism. No special treatment." "Of course, Sam. I wouldn't dream of taking advantage." That should have been my first warning, but I ignored my instincts and submitted a carefully worded recommendation. To my dismay, Patricia hired Heather immediately, seemingly charmed by her portfolio of modeling connections and social media presence. The first week, Heather played the perfect employee. She arrived early, asked thoughtful questions, and deferentially called me Ms. Mitchell in meetings. Several colleagues commented on our resemblance, though Heather quickly established her own identity with designer outfits that stretched the boundaries of office attire. By week 3, the facade began to crack. She started casually mentioning our relationship to clients, implying familial insight into my strategies. In meetings, she'd reference private family matters with a sly smile. "Sam's always been so organized, even as a child. You should have seen her color-coded toy bins." Small undermining comments accumulated. When I presented a comprehensive digital strategy for our sportswear line, Heather piped up, "That reminds me of the approach in that article I sent you last week. I'm glad you found it useful." I hadn't seen any article from her, but the damage was done. The room perceived my original work as derivative of her suggestion. Patricia was immediately taken with Heather's charismatic personality and fresh perspective. They began lunching together, heads bent in conspiratorial conversation. Soon after, Heather was assigned to projects well above her experience level, while my recommendations for her appropriate development were dismissed. Heather has a natural talent, Patricia informed me. We shouldn't hold her back with conventional trajectories. My allies noticed the shift. Rachel confronted me in the break room after Heather interrupted my presentation for the third time in one meeting. What's going on with your sister? She's deliberately undermining you, and Patricia's eating it up. I sighed, stirring my coffee. It's complicated. We've always had a competitive relationship. This isn't competition, Sam. It's sabotage. Diana joined the conversation, her usual calm demeanor troubled. The design team has received conflicting instructions. Heather's telling them she's relaying your revised directives, but they contradict what you've actually approved. I confronted Heather that evening, keeping my tone professional despite my growing frustration. We need to clarify communication channels. All design changes should come directly from me. She widened her eyes innocently. I was just trying to help, Sam. You've been so busy lately. I thought you'd appreciate me taking initiative. Before I could respond, she added with a slight edge. You know, Patricia mentioned you might be spread too thin. She's concerned about your work-life balance, especially with your personal commitments. The implication was clear. Heather had been discussing my marriage with Patricia, perhaps suggesting I was distracted or less committed because of my relationship with Marcus. It was a deliberate attempt to make me appear less professional. As weeks passed, I found myself increasingly isolated. Meetings were rescheduled without my knowledge. My input was solicited and then ignored. Junior team members who once sought my mentorship now gravitated toward Heather, who offered effusive praise and promises of advancement through her growing connection with Patricia. I tried addressing these issues directly with Patricia, requesting a private meeting to discuss department communication. I think there may be some confusion about reporting structures. I began carefully. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. The only confusion, Samantha, is your apparent difficulty with collaborative teamwork. Heather has brought a breath of fresh air to this department. Perhaps you could learn from her adaptability. I left her office seething but determined not to let this situation derail my career. Little did I know, the worst was yet to come. The Luminous collection was Reynolds Enterprises' bid to enter the ultra-luxury market, a $30 million investment in elevated fashion with sustainable materials. The CEO had personally selected our division to spearhead the marketing campaign, with final approval coming from the parent company, Reed Global Holdings. The unspoken implication was clear. This project could make or break careers. Despite growing department tensions, my experience and track record made me the obvious choice to lead the project. Even Patricia couldn't justify excluding me without raising corporate eyebrows. What she could do, however, was assign Heather to my team as creative liaison, a made-up title that gave her disproportionate influence. Our first strategy session started promisingly. I presented a comprehensive concept combining old-world craftsmanship with cutting-edge sustainability, positioning Luminous as the future of conscious luxury. The team responded enthusiastically, with designers already sketching concepts and copywriters jotting taglines. This is exactly what will differentiate us in the crowded luxury space, Rachel affirmed, projecting market segment analyses that supported my approach. Even Patricia seemed grudgingly impressed, making minimal notes while I outlined the timeline and deliverables. Only Heather remained quiet, studying me with an expression I recognized from childhood. Right before she would announce she'd been accepted to the same summer camp I'd been talking about for months. True to form, after the team dispersed, Heather approached Patricia with just a few thoughts that evolved into a 45-minute conversation. I wasn't invited to participate, but could see them through the glass conference room wall, Heather animated and Patricia nodding with increasing enthusiasm. The next morning, I received a revised brief with Patricia's signature. My core concept remained, but with significant enhancements that diluted the message and added unnecessary complexity. The sustainable elements were downplayed in favor of celebrity endorsements, exactly the superficial approach I'd argued against. These changes reflect additional stakeholder input, Patricia explained when I questioned the revisions. Heather raised some excellent points about appealing to the Gen's luxury consumer. I swallowed my frustration and adapted, reworking the strategy to incorporate the mandated changes while preserving as much of the original vision as possible. This became our pattern over the following weeks. I would develop detailed plans. Heather would suggest modifications in private meetings with Patricia. I would receive directives to implement changes that often contradicted established campaign elements. The real sabotage, however, occurred behind the scenes. Files went missing from the shared drive. Presentation data contained inexplicable errors. Customer research findings were mysteriously revised between my review and team distribution. After a particularly frustrating day, when the third round of designs was accidentally sent to the wrong printer, delaying approval by 48 hours, Diana confronted me in the parking garage. "This isn't coincidence, Sam. Someone's deliberately sabotaging this project, and we both know who." I leaned against my car, exhaustion seeping into my bones. "I can't prove anything." "You need to start documenting everything," Diana insisted. "Save original files offline. Record meeting discussions. Forward emails to your personal account. Build a case." She was right, of course. I began meticulously tracking discrepancies, creating secure backups, and requiring written confirmation of all decisions. I worked nights and weekends to verify every detail and correct mistakes before they derailed our progress. The additional hours took a toll on my health and my marriage. "You haven't been home before 9 all week," Marcus observed one night as I picked at a dinner he'd kept warm for me. "Is everything all right at work?" I hesitated, reluctant to involve him in office politics. "Just this luminous project. It's higher stakes than usual." He studied me with concern. "You know I can make inquiries if there's a problem." "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I need to handle this myself. Professional boundaries, remember?" He respected my wishes, though I occasionally caught him watching me with worry as I worked through weekends and took calls during dinner. My determination to succeed independently sometimes created distance between us, but Marcus understood my need to stand on my own merit. The situation came to a head 2 weeks before the final presentation when I discovered critical budget projections had been altered, making my marketing plan appear financially untenable. I had fortunately saved the original calculations and could prove the numbers had been changed. I confronted Heather in the break room, keeping my voice low despite my simmering anger. "I know what you're doing, and it stops now. These aren't innocent mistakes." Heather's expression flickered between shock and something darker before settling into wide-eyed innocence. "What are you talking about? If there are errors, it's probably just miscommunication." "Changing financial projections isn't miscommunication. It's deliberate sabotage." She stepped closer, dropping the innocent act. "Prove it." "Who do you think Patricia will believe? The uptight executive who's clearly jealous of her younger sister's rise, or the innovative team player who's been saving this project from your outdated approaches?" "This isn't about your career, is it?" I realized. "This is about me. Just like always." "Everything's always been about you, Sam. The responsible daughter. The successful executive. The one who married a billionaire." Her voice dripped with resentment. "Now it's my turn to be recognized. By destroying my work? That's your path to success. I learned from the best. Dad always said in business, you sometimes need to eliminate the competition." Her smile was cold. "Even family." Before I could respond, Patricia entered, eyebrows raised at our tense postures. "Problem, ladies?" Heather immediately softened. "Just a sisterly disagreement about approach. You know how passionate Sam gets about her concepts." Patricia's gaze settled on me with disapproval. "Perhaps save personal discussions for after hours? We have a presentation to finalize." As she left with Heather following like an obedient shadow, I realized I was fighting a losing battle. Every confrontation would be twisted to make me appear unprofessional. Every error would be framed as my incompetence rather than deliberate sabotage. I returned to my office and did the only thing I could. I worked harder. I created redundant systems, triple-checked every detail, and prepared alternative approaches for any possible scenario. As presentation day approached, I was exhausted but confident in my preparation. What I couldn't prepare for was Heather's final act of betrayal. The morning of the luminous presentation dawned bright and clear, a contrast to my turbulent emotions. I'd barely slept, reviewing slides until 2 a.m. before falling into restless dreams about showing up naked to the meeting. By 6, I was already dressed in my power suit, a charcoal gray ensemble with a silk blouse the exact shade of blue Marcus said matched my eyes. "You've got this," I told my reflection, applying an extra layer of concealer to hide the dark circles. 8 years of experience versus Heather's 3 months. Facts and results speak for themselves. My phone chimed with a text from Marcus. "Knocking them dead today, I know it. Proud of you always." His simple confidence bolstered mine. I typed back a quick thanks with a heart emoji, a rare display of digital affection from someone as reserved as me. As I gathered my presentation materials, a second message appeared. "Might stop by the office later. Board wants updates on Q3 projections." My stomach dropped. Marcus had never visited my department before, respecting our agreement to keep professional lives separate. Today of all days felt like particularly bad timing, but I couldn't ask him to change board business. I sent back a neutral "see you then," while anxiety churned inside me. At the office, the conference room buzzed with anticipation. Reynolds Enterprises executives filled the first row, including 2 vice presidents who rarely attended departmental presentations. Patricia sat beside them, whispering something that made the CEO's assistant smile and nod. Heather had claimed a seat directly in their eye line, wearing a designer dress that looked suspiciously similar to one from my own closet, though I couldn't remember lending it to her. I connected my laptop to the projector with steady hands, refusing to let nerves undermine weeks of preparation. As I distributed handouts, Rachel caught my eye and gave a subtle thumbs up. Diana nodded encouragingly from her seat near the back. Their silent support meant everything. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice clear and confident. "Today I'm excited to present our integrated marketing strategy for the Luminous collection, Reynolds Enterprises' entry into the ultra-luxury, sustainable fashion market." The first segment flowed perfectly. My market analysis was comprehensive, identifying precise demographic targets and untapped potential in eco-conscious luxury consumers. Even Patricia seemed engaged, nodding at particularly insightful points about competitor positioning. Then came the creative concept presentation. As I explained our conscious luxury tagline and visual approach, Heather raised her hand with a practiced, apologetic expression. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Sam, but didn't we revise this direction last week?" The focus groups responded more positively to the timeless radiance concept. No such focus groups existed. I knew because I personally oversaw all consumer research. We conducted A/B testing on both concepts. I countered smoothly. Conscious luxury outperformed alternative approaches by 27% among our target demographic. "That's not what the reports showed," Heather persisted, looking confused in a way that suggested I was either incompetent or lying. I maintained my composure, though my heart raced. "I have the complete data sets here if anyone would like to review them after the presentation." Patricia interjected with a tight smile. "Let's continue, shall we? We can address discrepancies offline." The damage was done. Doubt had been introduced, and several executives exchanged glances. I pressed forward, but the confident energy had dissipated, replaced by a subtle undercurrent of skepticism. Heather interrupted twice more during my budget projections, each time expressing confusion about figures that differed from what she'd reviewed yesterday. Each interruption was framed as helpful clarification rather than contradiction, making it difficult to counter without appearing defensive. By the time I reached the implementation timeline, tension headache throbbed behind my eyes. The executives still seemed interested, but their trust in the data had been undermined. I needed a strong finish to salvage the presentation. Before we move to the final segment and ROI projections, let's take a 15-minute break, I suggested. Coffee and refreshments are available in the break room. As people filed out, I remained at the podium, reviewing my notes and taking deep breaths. I didn't notice Heather's return until she stood beside me, holding 2 coffee cups. "Peace offering?" she said, extending one toward me. I know we've had our differences, but this project matters to both of us. For a moment, I glimpsed the sister I'd always wanted, the one who would collaborate rather than compete. I accepted the cup with a tentative smile. Thanks, Heather. Maybe after this presentation we can talk about finding a better way to work together. I'd like that, she replied, maintaining eye contact with seemingly genuine sincerity. As I turned back to my laptop to advance to the next slide, Heather stumbled slightly. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Her coffee cup tilted, sending a cascade of scalding liquid directly onto my silk blouse and lap. The pain was immediate and intense. I gasped, jumping back as the hot coffee soaked through to my skin. Around us, people returning from break froze, witnessing my humiliation. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Heather exclaimed, her voice carrying throughout the room. It was an accident. But as I looked up through tears of pain, I caught a fleeting expression on her face, a millisecond of satisfaction before she arranged her features into exaggerated concern. The stumble had been perfectly timed and executed. Coffee dripped from my ruined blouse onto presentation notes and the carpet. The front row of executives watched with expressions ranging from uncomfortable pity to poorly concealed amusement. Someone snickered in the back of the room. Patricia pressed her lips together in what might have been concern but looked suspiciously like suppressed satisfaction. "These things happen," Patricia said dismissively. "Perhaps we should reschedule." The suggestion landed like a physical blow. Rescheduling meant weeks of additional preparation, missed market timing, and a permanent black mark on my project management record. Everything I'd worked for was dissolving as quickly as the coffee staining my clothes. "No need," I said through gritted teeth, fighting back tears of pain and humiliation. "Just give me 5 minutes to clean up." As I gathered my dignity and turned toward the door, it swung open. There stood Marcus Reed, immaculate in a bespoke suit, his commanding presence immediately shifting the energy in the room. His eyes swept over the scene, taking in my coffee-soaked appearance, Heather's performance of concern, and the uncomfortable audience. In that moment, our carefully separated worlds collided spectacularly. My husband had just witnessed my greatest professional humiliation, orchestrated by my own sister. The conference room fell silent as Marcus entered. Most employees had never seen the CEO of Reed Global Holdings in person, and his unexpected appearance created an immediate atmosphere of tension. I stood frozen, coffee still dripping from my ruined blouse, mortification competing with the burning sensation on my skin. Marcus's eyes met mine, communicating volumes in a split-second glance. Then his expression shifted from concerned husband to calculating executive, so seamlessly it was almost frightening. "Ms. Mitchell, are you all right?" he asked, his voice controlled but carrying undertones that made several people straighten in their seats. "I'm fine, Mr. Reed," I managed, maintaining our professional facade despite the circumstances. "Just a small accident." Marcus turned to his executive assistant who had materialized beside him. "Janet, please find Ms. Mitchell a change of clothes and have someone check those burns." "Immediately, sir," she responded, approaching me with quiet efficiency. Before I could leave with her, Marcus addressed the room. "I believe a 15-minute recess is in order. When we reconvene, I'd like everyone currently in this room to return, plus Thomas Bailey from Legal and Sarah Chun from Human Resources." The mention of legal and HR sent a ripple of unease through the audience. Patricia stepped forward with an ingratiating smile. "Mr. Reed, what an unexpected pleasure. I'm Patricia Reynolds, Marketing Director. We weren't aware you'd be joining us today." "Evidently," Marcus replied, his tone making the single word sound like an indictment. "We'll continue this discussion shortly." As Janet guided me to the executive floor's private restroom, I caught a glimpse of Heather's face. The smug satisfaction had vanished, replaced by dawning horror as she realized whose husband she'd been undermining for months. In the restroom, a company doctor examined the reddening skin on my chest and abdomen while Janet produced a replacement blouse identical to my ruined one. "Mr. Reed keeps a wardrobe for emergencies," she explained, noticing my surprise. He anticipated you might need appropriate clothing at the office someday, though not under these circumstances. The thought that Marcus had prepared for contingencies while respecting my independence brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I blinked them away, refusing to let emotion undermine my professionalism further. "What's happening in there?" I asked Janet as I changed. Her expression remained neutral. "Mr. Reed is making phone calls." 20 minutes later, I returned to find the conference room rearranged. Marcus sat at the head of the table, flanked by Thomas from legal and Sarah from HR. The executives who'd been in the front row now sat looking uncomfortable in the middle, while my team members had been moved to positions of prominence. Patricia and Heather sat isolated on the far side, with empty chairs between them and everyone else. As I took my seat beside Rachel, Marcus began without preamble. "I came here today expecting a presentation on the Luminous collection. Instead, I witnessed what appears to be the culmination of a pattern of workplace harassment and sabotage." His gaze swept the room. "Would anyone care to explain what I just observed?" Patricia immediately launched into damage control. "A simple accident during a high-pressure presentation, Mr. Reed. These things happen in creative environments. Perhaps we're all a bit on edge with project deadlines." "An accident," Marcus repeated flatly. "Ms. Wilson, would you characterize what happened as an accident?" Heather, still operating under the delusion she could charm her way out of any situation, nodded emphatically. "Completely unintentional, sir. I feel terrible about it." "Interesting." Marcus opened a folder before him. "Because we have received multiple reports over the past month documenting what appears to be systematic undermining of this project. Missing files, altered data, scheduling conflicts that isolated key team members." He looked up. "Would anyone like to comment on these incidents?" The room remained silent until Diana spoke up. "Those weren't isolated incidents, sir. They formed a pattern specifically targeting Ms. Mitchell's work." Marcus nodded. "Ms. Taylor, you've worked closely with both Ms. Mitchell and Ms. Wilson. Have you observed any concerning behavior?" Rachel straightened. "Yes, sir. On multiple occasions, I witnessed Ms. Wilson taking credit for Ms. Mitchell's ideas and strategies. When confronted, she would deny it or claim miscommunication. And Ms. Reynolds, what was your response to these reported issues?" Patricia shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't aware of any pattern. If Ms. Mitchell had concerns, she should have brought them directly to me." "She did," Diana interjected. "3 times in documented emails. You dismiss them as creative differences between sisters." Patricia's face tightened. "I believe family matters should be handled privately, not brought into professional settings." "Interesting perspective," Marcus noted, "particularly since Ms. Wilson's employment application specifically highlights her family connection as a qualification." He turned a page in his folder. "In fact, her entire resume appears to contain significant misrepresentations about her experience and capabilities." Heather paled visibly. "There must be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Ms. Wilson. Our verification process is quite thorough." Marcus closed the folder. "Ms. Mitchell, despite today's interruption, would you be willing to complete your presentation on the Luminous collection?" The room's attention shifted to me. In that moment, I had a choice: retreat into humiliation or reclaim my professional standing. Taking a deep breath, I stood and moved to the podium with as much dignity as I could muster. "I'd be happy to continue, Mr. Reed." For the next 30 minutes, I delivered the remainder of my presentation flawlessly, without a single interruption. The executives who had seemed skeptical earlier now gave me their full attention, taking notes and asking relevant questions during the Q&A segment. When I concluded, the applause was genuine and sustained. "Thank you, Ms. Mitchell," Marcus said formally. "Your team's work is exemplary. The board will review the full proposal next week, but I believe we have a solid foundation for moving forward." As the room began to empty, Marcus added, "Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Wilson, please remain. We have additional matters to discuss." I left with Rachel and Diana, maintaining professional composure until we reached the safety of my office. Only then did I allow myself to collapse into my chair, the adrenaline of the past hour leaving me shaky and exhausted. "What just happened?" Rachel whispered, closing the door behind us. "I think my husband just saved my career," I admitted, the irony not lost on me. After years of insisting on professional independence, Marcus's intervention had been both necessary and mortifying. An hour later, an email from Human Resources announced Patricia Reynolds had decided to pursue other opportunities effective immediately. A subsequent message stated Heather Wilson was no longer with the company. Security footage showed both being escorted from the building, Heather in tears and Patricia in stony silence. By evening, Marcus's assistant had arranged a departmental meeting where Sarah from HR outlined a comprehensive investigation into recent concerning workplace behaviors. All employees were encouraged to report any incidents of bullying, sabotage, or hostile work environment they had witnessed. Reynolds Enterprises and Reed Global Holdings have zero tolerance for workplace harassment in any form, Sarah emphasized. All reports will be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. As the meeting concluded, people approached me with apologies and support. Some admitted witnessing Heather's behavior, but feeling uncertain how to address it. Others confessed Patricia had actively discouraged them from collaborating with me, creating artificial divisions within the team. The day that had begun with humiliation had transformed into vindication, but victory felt hollow. My sister's betrayal, though consistent with our history, had reached new depths. My carefully constructed professional identity had been irrevocably linked to my marriage. And while justice had been served, I knew workplace whispers would follow me for months. As I gathered my belongings to leave, Marcus appeared at my office door. "Ready to go home?" he asked quietly. In the privacy of our car, I finally allowed myself to break down, years of frustration and hurt pouring out as Marcus held me silently, understanding that sometimes presence means more than words. The burns on my chest and abdomen healed faster than the wounds to my pride and trust. 4 days after the incident, I alternated between vindication and humiliation, relief and anxiety. Marcus gave me space to process my conflicted emotions, never pressuring me to discuss what happened until I was ready. 1 week after what office gossip had dubbed the coffee confrontation, I received the first text from Heather. "This is so unfair. You've ruined my career because you couldn't handle a little competition." I didn't respond, but the messages continued, escalating from self-pity to accusation to threats. "Mom and Dad are devastated. They think you've gone too far. Everyone knows you only have your position because of who you married." The final blow came from my parents directly. My father called on a Sunday afternoon, his voice tight with disappointment. "Samantha, what were you thinking? Getting your sister fired over an accident." I gripped the phone tightly. "It wasn't an accident, Dad. It was the culmination of months of deliberate sabotage. Heather says you've been threatened by her success since childhood, that you couldn't stand her working in your department, showing you up." The familiar pattern reasserted itself. Heather played victim. My parents accepted her version without question, and I was cast as the villain. But this time, something had changed within me. "Dad, I'm not having this conversation again. Heather lied on her resume, undermined company projects, and deliberately caused a workplace incident that could have resulted in significant injuries. Those are facts, not interpretations." "Your sister is devastated," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Your mother can barely get her out of bed. The least you could do is talk to your husband about giving her another chance." Marcus made a business decision based on documented misconduct. I won't ask him to compromise his company's integrity because Heather refuses to take responsibility for her actions. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Finally, my father sighed. "I always thought you were the sensible one, Samantha. I'm disappointed to see how power has changed you." After hanging up, I sat in our garden for hours, examining the patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades. For the first time, I saw clearly how my parents' enabling had contributed to Heather's behavior and my own tendency to accommodate it. The realization was painful, but necessary for healing. At work, the The aftermath of Patricia and Heather's departures created both opportunities and challenges. An internal audit revealed the extent of Patricia's mismanagement: biased performance reviews, misallocated resources, and credit regularly reassigned from actual contributors to favorites. The marketing department required significant restructuring. 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus invited me to his home office for a difficult conversation. "The board has approved your luminous concept," he began, "but there's a complication. Given recent events and our relationship, there are concerns about potential conflicts of interest if you continue leading the project." My stomach tightened. They want to remove me from my own campaign. "No, Marcus clarify." They suggested transferring you to our Madison Avenue division to lead their luxury marketing department. It's a lateral move in terms of title, but comes with a larger team and budget. So, I'm being punished for being your wife and Heather's victim. You're being offered an opportunity to build something without the shadow of recent events, Marcus countered gently. But the choice is entirely yours. If you prefer to stay, I'll support that decision and manage any board concerns. I spent days weighing the options. Staying meant fighting lingering perceptions and rebuilding team dynamics. Transferring meant starting fresh, but could appear as a retreat. Neither choice was perfect. Ultimately, I chose the Madison Avenue position, not as an escape, but as strategic advancement. The new role offered freedom from established patterns and the chance to build a department aligned with my vision from the ground up. Marcus respected my decision, maintaining our professional boundaries by having HR handle all transition details. My departure from the Reynolds building was bittersweet. Rachel and Diana promised to stay in touch, though we all knew workplace friendships often faded with proximity. Former colleagues wished me well, with varying degrees of sincerity. My replacement on the Luminous project, a talented strategist named Andrea Lawrence, sought my input during the transition, ensuring the campaign would maintain its integrity. In my new position, I established clear boundaries from day one. I used my maiden name professionally and never leveraged Marcus's position for advantage. When questions about the incident inevitably arose, I addressed them directly but briefly, focusing conversations on future projects rather than past drama. Therapy became an essential part of my healing process. Dr. Brennan specialized in family dynamics and helped me recognize patterns I'd normalized throughout my life. Our weekly sessions provided tools for setting boundaries and processing the complex grief of family estrangement. "You're mourning the sister you wished you had, not the sister you actually have," she observed during a particularly difficult session. Accepting that difference is crucial to your healing. 3 months passed before I saw Heather again. Our cousin's wedding created an unavoidable family gathering, complete with the expected pressure to put the past behind us for one day. I arrived prepared for manipulation but committed to maintaining boundaries. Heather approached during the reception, champagne glass in hand, and practiced contrition on her face. "You look good, Sam. The new job must be treating you well." "It is," I replied neutrally. "Congratulations on the modeling contract. Mom mentioned you're doing a campaign in Milan." Her eyes narrowed slightly at my lack of engagement with her opening. "Yes, finally back to what I'm actually good at after that corporate disaster." She sighed dramatically. "I've been thinking about what happened. Maybe we both could have handled things differently." It was the closest to an apology she could manage, carefully constructed to distribute blame equally while positioning herself as the mature peacemaker. 6 months earlier, I might have accepted this non-apology to keep the peace. Now I recognized it for what it was. "Heather, I'm not interested in rewriting history. What happened, happened. I wish you success in your modeling career, but I need space from our relationship." "Space?" she repeated incredulously. "We're sisters. You can't just decide not to have a relationship with me." "Actually, I can. And until you can acknowledge your actions and take genuine responsibility, that's exactly what I'm doing." Her face hardened. "This is about control. You've always needed to feel superior." "No, Heather. This is about self-respect. Enjoy the wedding." Walking away from that conversation felt like shedding a lifetime of accumulated weight. I had finally broken the pattern of forgiveness without accountability that had defined our relationship. My parents were predictably upset when they learned of my decision to limit contact with Heather. My mother's tearful phone calls about family loyalty and my father's lectures about holding grudges continued for weeks. I maintained my position calmly but firmly, explaining that healthy relationships required mutual respect, not just shared DNA. Gradually, the calls became less frequent. My parents adjusted to our new dynamic, realizing their emotional manipulation no longer influenced my decisions. Our relationship remains strained, but is slowly evolving into something more honest, if less comfortable. At Madison Avenue, my department flourished under leadership built on transparency and collaboration. Our campaigns won industry recognition, and team members thrived in an environment where credit was given appropriately and ideas were valued regardless of their source. When Forbes featured me in their Women Transforming Marketing issue, the article focused entirely on my professional achievements with only a passing mention of my personal life. Marcus and I strengthened our partnership through this challenging period, finding a healthier balance between independence and support. We established monthly career councils where we could discuss professional challenges and opportunities in a structured setting, separating these conversations from our personal relationship. Looking back on that fateful day when hot coffee soaked through my silk blouse, I recognize it as both an ending and a beginning. It ended my pattern of enabling toxic behavior and began my journey toward authentic self-advocacy. The public humiliation that I once considered my greatest professional nightmare became the catalyst for my most significant personal growth. If you've ever found yourself caught in cycles of family drama or workplace toxicity, remember that breaking free requires more than just recognizing the pattern. It demands the courage to establish boundaries, even when they're labeled as selfish or disloyal by those who benefited from their absence. True healing begins with valuing yourself enough to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance your life. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Share in the comments if you've ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members, especially in professional settings. How did you handle it? What advice would you give others facing similar situations? Your support means everything, and I'm grateful for this amazing community. Until next time, remember that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary for building the life you deserve.